Hello. Oh, that was so abrupt.
That was.
I wasn't. Welcome to the party, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am Mel. I'm on Twitter, but I at MJ McCallie Writes. I'll go ahead and put my name up there. So glad to
Hey.
see everybody. Have Natalie Vardabasso here. I'm going to introduce her in just a second, but we're so glad you came tonight. We're going to be talking about our updates for the Spaces users. Whether you have a free account or a pro account, you're going to be excited about what's coming up. We're going to have a special time of game and prizes, and you must be here to win those prizes. And the game is going to be so much fun. So glad you're at the party. Natalie, it is great to see you. I have actually had a podcast with Natalie, an episode on growth over grades,
Yeah.
and you were here with our last update. So fill us in. What's been going on with you?
Oh man, what has been going on? Well, first of all, thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I've been busy trying to move into this new world I'm in of being, I guess I would call it like a professional development educator. So I've been working with a bunch of different schools and districts, but then also I have this little entrepreneurial spirit that I've been nurturing most of my life. And I finally unleashed it. And I actually launched a new program called the Empowerment Ecosystem. So we just wrapped our beta version of that. There was 15 educational leaders from across North America who are, like me, fired up about rehumanizing assessment by empowering learners to tell their story. So we went through that journey together, and now I'm looking at how to grow that. So it's been busy, but good.
Yeah, so exciting. You go, girl.
Thank you. Thank you.
No, yeah. It's wonderful that you're doing so many good things. And on our Growth Over Grades episode, we talked about storytelling and how,
Mhm.
we bring that human aspect into storytelling. It's not standardized. It's a little scary,
Mhm. Yeah.
and that I love your message and everything that you talk about. Let me know. Let's go a little bit longer. I want to see if anybody wants to join in,
Mhm.
and then I'm going to drop off and let you take over. But for
Okay.
those of you who are just tuning in, I'm so glad you're here. I'm Mel. I'm part of the SpacesEDU Team. Welcome to the party. We just have so much in store for the next hour. Natalie's going to talk and open up with her. The last time she was here, it was just so amazing. We all had goosebumps. So glad she's here. Then we're going to talk about some of the Spaces updates, whether you are a free user or have a pro account with your school. There's so many amazing things that have dropped this November. And then we're going to have a fun game and prizes. So stick around because we want you to get those prizes. Now, if you're watching the replay, we'll have an opportunity for you to get a prize as well. But without further ado, I am going to give it over to Natalie Vardabasso. She is an
Hey.
amazing speaker and educator and soon to be author in education. So I'm
Hopefully.
going to drop off. I can't wait to listen to you speak, Natalie. Thank you for being here tonight.
Oh, thanks, Mel. And I'm honored to be here because I feel like my mission aligns so much with the space its mission and what you're all trying to do. So it's always an honor to get to be here and collaborate and share ideas and stories. So, quick little bit about me. My background, obviously, been in education for a while. I was a teacher, then an instructional coach, and my final job in a school was as the assessment lead for a K to 12 context. And now I'm working full time as a professional development educator with schools, with districts, and also with individual change agents and leaders to help them to find their voice so that they can empower others to find their voice. And a final thing that I think is important to know about me is that I firmly believe that we should never ask our students to do that which we're not willing to do ourselves. So, over the past 3 years, I've been making my learning public through a podcast called Edu Crush, which is just like the name implies. So, if you're someone who loves podcasts and you get excited about reimagining education, then definitely check it out wherever you get great podcasts. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. So, what I wanted to speak with you about came out of an organic conversation that Mel and I had recently had, where we were discussing student led conferences. And this brought up for me some frustrations that I've experienced as a teacher many, many times. And I realized that since it's November, many teachers have probably felt the same frustration because they just finished their first round of conferences. And the frustration is this: when we give our students the opportunity to share their reflections on their learning and how things are going, it's just so shallow. It's disappointing at times. So for me, it went like this. I always would invite the students to join my parent teacher conferences because I believed we shouldn't be setting goals for students behind their backs. It should involve them. So I'd invite them to come along, and there'd always come the moment where I'd say, "Okay, Jimmy," it's always Jimmy. "Okay, Jimmy, how do you think the first semester is going?" And I would try to get ahead of the inevitable and say, but you can't say good. And so, of course, he would sit and think for a minute, and then he'd get a little mischievous gleam in his eye and then say, fine. And so, of course, I'd prod and try to get him to say a bit more. And he'd talk about the different activities we'd done. And he would talk about the ones he liked, the ones he didn't. And I was just like, that was disappointing. And I thought I had a pretty good assessment system going in my classroom, but it just didn't seem to transfer when it came time for those conferences. So now in my work with schools and districts, I've noticed a lot of people are really excited about the possibilities of digital portfolios. And as they work to implement them, I see this same disappointment and frustration creep up. And my friend Katie White, who is also an assessment consultant and author, she often calls this problem the issue of the refrigerator and the scrapbook. So when people implement a digital portfolio tool, there's so much promise. There's this idea of students being able to gather evidence of their own learning, but then they put it into practice and it either becomes a refrigerator when students only choose the most polished and perfected pieces of work, the types of things that would go on the refrigerator. If points and scores are involved, good luck getting them to put anything in there that isn't the top of the pack. Or it becomes a scrapbook in which they just start dumping everything into it without much care or thought. And it becomes more of a tool for ritual compliance than it does for any thoughtful or careful curation. And yet, we know there is so much power in reflection. I think John Dewey said it best when he said, we don't learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on experience. So we know that reflection is where deep learning and meaning making happens. So it really begs the question, and one that I've been wondering for a while, and I have some answers to share with you. How can we support our students to make reflections that are more deep and meaningful? Now, luckily for us, there is a tool that we all have at our disposal. It's free, doesn't require technology. We're all naturally really good at it. And on top of all of that, it taps into our shared humanity because it's at the intersection of our consciousness, our capacity for empathy, our ability to build culture. And so this tool that has the power to unleash deeper reflections and tap into our humanity, of course, is story and storytelling. We are all natural storytellers. We are people who love to connect through story. We love to share stories. But there's a difference between telling a story and telling a great story. So to bring it back to students for a second, we've all been in those situations. Actually, I'm having flashbacks right now to going through a celebration of learning, and you've got a student standing beside, their model of a utopian city built using colored popsicle sticks. And they want to tell you the story of their learning. And you get to their booth and they're like, every single thing that happened. And the teacher told me to do this. And then they told me to do this. And then they told me to do this. And then this happened. You're like, okay. So a good story needs structure. And we know it needs to have 5 things: plot, character, conflict, setting, theme. And like anything we do in the school space, we can't just expect our students to do that naturally. We have to instruct, we have to scaffold, we have to provide feedback on how to tell a better story. So, what I want to offer you today are 3 story structures that are well known in society and from throughout history that we can offer our learners as a lens to look at their learning through and also to fit their story within so that they have a structure that'll lead to something really meaningful and transformational for them. So these 3 story structures, some of which you'll probably have heard of, they're quite well known. The first one I want to talk about is rags to riches, probably one of the most well-known story structures of all. Then one you might not have heard of, but it's called the Pride and Fall. This is the classic tragic tale. And one that you've probably definitely never heard of, it comes from Japanese culture and it's called Kisho Tenketsu. Kisho Tenketsu. So I want to talk through each of those and how it helps us to unlock a richer story of learning. So let's start with rags to riches. Like I said, this is probably the most well-known story structure. So in short, if you haven't heard of it, it features a character who is in a rags state at the beginning of the story. They're in a downtrodden state, but they have the potential for greatness. And as the story progresses, they eventually achieve wealth and success, happiness, importance. In many ways, it's that classic underdog story that we all know and love. It's a zero to hero story, if you will. Now, of course, we don't want to think of our students as being in rags or being a zero, because of course they come with a whole host of strengths and cultural assets that we can draw from. But like all of us, they have something within them that they desire, something that they would like to see become better or more rich or beautiful in their lives. So I think the rags to riches story structure can actually become an incredible structure to help students tell the story of how they set a goal and how they work to achieve it. So let's take to understand this a little bit better, because there's some different beats in this story structure that's important to know to help students capture it and use it. So let's use the story that you've probably heard of called Cinderella. So Cinderella begins where she is in her downtrodden state. She is living with her evil stepsister and stepmother, cleaning, and she yearns, she dreams for her one true love. And in this story, there's always a call into the new world that gets the character closer to their goal. So in the case of Cinderella, the fairy godmother arrives, bippity boppity boo, and all of that. She turns the pumpkin into a carriage and her rags into a gown, and she sends her to the ball. And in this story, when the character gets into the new world, there's always a sense of initial success. So Cinderella goes to the ball, locks eyes with the prince, love at first sight. Everyone's jealous. She's stunning, but then there's crisis. So Cinderella loses track of time. She's so caught up dancing with the prince, she has to ghost him suddenly and get out of there to get home on time before the carriage turns back into a pumpkin. So in this story, this is a really critical part because the character could lose hope and go, well, what are you going to do? I guess I'm just meant to clean floors for the rest of my life. This is who I am. This is how it's meant to be. But they have to find their inner strength. In the case of Cinderella, she can't lose hope. And of course, we know how this ends. The prince shows up. He puts the slipper on her foot. It fits, and then he whisks her away to the castle. So, first of all, problematic representation of woman aside, because there's a story here of woman being the damsel in distress that needs someone else to save her, to find that inner strength. This is an incredible story structure to talk to what it feels like when not just students, but when all of us have a goal. So there's something that we yearn for. There's something that we're seeking. In the case of a student, it could be someone who's shy and dreams of being able to speak more confidently when they're talking to their peers, basically me in high school. And they have this dream. For many of us, it could be the dream to pick up a new gym regimen in January and to get a head start on the year with health. And we get into that new world. Things are going pretty well. That first week at the gym, we went 5 days. We're crushing it. We post on Instagram. Yes, awesome. But then there's always that inevitable off day. And this happens with students all the time. They didn't sleep well the night before. They forgot something at home. Things are off. And this is where it's so easy to let that little voice in our head go, yeah, that's because you're not meant to be fit. That's because you're not meant to be outgoing. That's because you're not meant to be smart. This is who you are. So how we can take that opportunity to help our learners see that if they persevere and if they adapt and if they brush that off and pick themselves back up, they can achieve their goal. There is so much value in this story structure. And I think this is one that we would love to dream of for all of our students. Can you imagine as a teacher if we could say for every project, for every unit, for every activity, they are called into this new world where we walk them through a rags to riches transformation? That would be amazing. But of course, that's not always the case. And in fact, I think sometimes we fake this story structure in schools a little bit. I have a confession to make. Hopefully you don't hold this against me, but when we first implemented a 4-level scale to talk about our students' behavior, to communicate their progress in it to parents, you'd always start them at a 2 because you didn't want to start too high. As the year went on, they get some 3s, and then you'd always have a couple 4s for the end. So we like to tell this progression towards greatness that isn't always true because we all make mistakes. We all fall short of lofty expectations. And this is where the second story structure comes into play. And it is the pride and fall. Because at the end of the day, the rags to riches story is incredible. We love to overcome hardship and achieve our goals, but that's not always where the deepest learning comes from. It's often from when we fall short, from when we make mistakes and look back to ask ourselves what happened. So that's really what the pride and fall is all about. It's a character who has a big dream for what they can become. They have lofty expectations. They might get a little too cocky at initial success, and then eventually that leads to catastrophe. So this story structure is sometimes also called Icarus, based off the name of the Greek character who flew a little too close to the sun. And one of my favorite popular culture examples of it is Titanic. So to unpack how this works using Titanic, we have in this structure, we have these characters. Let's take the shipbuilders in this case, who have built the biggest, most majestic ship in the world at this time. And they are so proud of this accomplishment that they go a step further. They claim it is unsinkable. And they are so sure of this claim that they say we don't need lifeboats on the decks. It's going to take up space where people could be wandering and sitting, and it's an unsinkable ship. So what do we need enough lifeboats for people on the ship for? We're not going to even use them. Of course, we all know where this goes. Titanic goes on its maiden voyage across the frigid Atlantic Ocean. It strikes an iceberg in the middle of the night, ripping a hole down the starboard side. And over the next several hours, it slowly sinks, taking 1,500 lives with it. Now, we wouldn't want to hope a Titanic level catastrophe on any of our learners or students, but for many of them, not getting the marks they expected, forgetting their homework, failing an exam, that feels like a Titanic level catastrophe. And if we can find the psychological safety for them to be able to reflect on those moments, there is so much learning that they can tap into. So much learning, because when we reflect back when things go wrong, that's when we are most likely to discover our blind spots, to notice the assumptions that we upheld, the strategies we tried, the beliefs we have about ourselves that led to that eventual downfall. And if we can pinpoint those things, that's where we're most likely to make change. Sometimes success can be something that we just keep chasing after, and it starts to lead to these perfectionist tendencies. But if we can reflect on our mistakes without judgment, without shame, that's where things really change. For instance, I don't think any ships were allowed to sail without enough lifeboats on board for the number of people on board following the Titanic. This is where some of the greatest change happens. So if we can allow space and then allow students the chance to tell the story of how sometimes things didn't go according to plan and how there might have been a tragic flaw that they can reflect on and own going forward, this is where we can see some huge changes. Which brings us to the final story structure. And for this one, we're going to have to step well outside of Western culture. So it's called Kisho Tenketsu, and it comes from Japanese culture. So something important to understand about story from our Western perspective is that we often imagine it in three parts: a beginning, a middle, and an end, as Aristotle described. And those three parts are organized around a central conflict or confrontation. So our main character can either overcome that conflict and emerge victorious, or they don't overcome the conflict and they perish and things fall apart and there's catastrophe. But that thinking actually comes from a cultural archetype that's alive in all of our minds. And Zaretta Hammond calls it individualism. So that's a very individualist way of thinking about things. But this story structure comes from a different cultural archetype. It's one of collectivism. And so rather than being organized around a central conflict, it's actually organized around reconciliation. And because of this, I think it is the perfect story to capture collaboration and what collaboration could be. So let's talk about how this story structure works, and then we'll talk about it in a classroom setting. So the four parts of the title, Ki, Sho, Ten, Ketsu, are actually the four parts of the structure. So Ki, pretty simple. It's the introduction. It's where we meet the main character in the setting. Sho, just development. We learn a little bit more about them. Where things get really interesting is the Ten. So 10 stands for twist. And this isn't like a cinematic, dramatic plot twist like we're used to in our movies and TV shows. This is just a moment when the reader goes, that's a new piece of information. I don't know what to make of this. There's a little bit of tension there for them of, I wonder how this is all going to work out. And then Ketsu is where things reconcile and we go, okay, there it is. So this makes a lot more sense if I can give you an example of a story. And this is one I'm going to spoil. So hopefully you've all read it. You probably have, because nearly every junior high teacher teaches it, or you read it when you were in junior high. But it's a story called The Lottery by Shirley Jackson. And it's a perfect example of this 4-act story structure with a subtle twist in the middle. So it opens with the townsfolk gathering in the city square because there's going to be a lottery that day. We're like, okay. And there's a black box that's brought out, and they start drawing names from this black box. People are being called, and they go and they pick out a piece of paper. So you're like, okay, I don't totally know what's going on, but there's a lottery. Cool. The twist happens when Bill Hutchinson goes to pick out a piece of paper, and his wife Tessie starts losing her mind. She thinks it's not fair. She's yelling, she's screaming. So as a reader, you go, that's weird. Like, a lottery is supposed to be a positive thing. Why is she suddenly so triggered? What's happening right now? So we're curious to see how this reconciles. And this is really grim. So sorry if you haven't read this, but what happens then, of course, is then they have to open their papers at the end, Tessie's has a black mark on it. All of the townsfolk pick up rocks and they stone her to death. So this story structure is really interesting because it doesn't often have a happy ending. And when a book or a movie follows this structure, people in Western culture tend to look at it and go, that didn't really wrap up, did it? It didn't really like come to a close. It wasn't really about anything. And it's almost frustrating. But a lot of people also love this structure because they say it's much more reflective of reality. This is how things actually are. Things happen, things come into our life, and we just have to reconcile with them. Twists and turns happen all the time. And I think this is the perfect way to help rewrite the narrative of collaboration for our students. Because when they engage in a collaborative project or an activity, they often look at it like a conflicting narrative. Oh, we have group work. I'm going to have to do everything. These slackers are going to come along with me. We'll all get the same mark, but they're not going to take away from my grade. It's seen as this the space for battle and power and conflict, rather than what it could be, which we all dream of when we think of collaboration and we create the space for students to work together. So let's paint a scenario that a student might reflect on through this story structure. There is a group project happening, and one member goes away because he's going to plan the presentation for the group. So he works on it for a day, comes back to the group, and he reveals to them the PowerPoint. And the PowerPoint only has images on the slides. So he's been working really hard in his Toastmasters class and has learned that we shouldn't be looking at the slide. We should actually be looking at the audience. And the slides just are there as an aid. So this is what he built from. But then the other member of his group who hates presenting needs every single word on the slide because he doesn't want to look at the audience. He wants to look at the slide. He could see that as a moment of conflict of this cannot work. It cannot go forward. We have to shut this down. Or he could look at it like a twist. It's a new piece of information. And choose to reconcile to this new reality. Choose to go, okay, if that's going to be the way it is, and because I need to honor that, then perhaps I need to practice before I present. Crazy idea. Perhaps I need cue cards to help me that I could look down at, but this is what it is, so I'm going to reconcile. And the point here is that every person we meet knows something we don't and has a perspective that we don't. And so I think this is such an important story to help to tell even for our society. If we can learn to reconcile all of our different perspectives, then we can accomplish so much more together than we can alone. So this is a very important story to tell. And we can start by allowing the space for our learners to do that. So that brings us to the end of our 3 structures, but there's a couple big points that I want to end on. The first is that if we expect our students to tell these deep and meaningful stories through their reflection, then it's on us as the educators to create the conditions for them to be able to actively construct those stories. So it's on us to allow them to be empowered to set personally meaningful goals at the beginning of a project or a unit or even just a single activity. It's also on us to create the psychological safety so they feel like they can take mistakes without their grade book being absolutely decimated. And it's also on us to create the opportunities for them to come together and to collaborate on relevant and engaging projects. But then this is the harder point that we have to also uphold to be true, is that if we want to cultivate those conditions for our learners, we first have to uphold them for ourselves. So are we setting personally meaningful goals and striving for them? Are we dreaming of more and working to achieve them and finding that inner strength when crisis inevitably hits? Are we allowing ourselves to make mistakes and not beating ourselves up in judgment and in shame? And are we opening ourselves up to other perspectives and collaborating? Because if we can't do these things in our own lives, then there's no way that we can create the conditions for students to have these experiences and then share these deep and meaningful stories when it comes to that inevitable time for reflections or putting something in their portfolio or doing a celebration of learning. So if we can unlock it in ourselves, then we can cultivate the conditions. And I promise you that your students will be able to tell some juicy stories at their next conference or in their next portfolio. And those are the kinds of stories that stick with you. Am I right, Mel?
I love a juicy story. Okay.
Yeah, right?
So Natalie, do you have, and maybe you already said this, but do you have a favorite type of storytelling?
Oh, a type of storytelling. Like, do you mean a structure or
A
like a
structure,
medium
yeah.
through which to tell? You know what? I have been more and more compelled by this idea of Kisho Tenketsu. I think because we're living in an increasingly polarized culture where the conflict is real. Either you're this or you're that. And if you're with us, then you're not with them. That I wish that we could all start seeing the world through the lens of this story a little bit more and recognize that there are just all these different perspectives and one of them doesn't have to beat out another one. They can all
Right.
be equally right. And it's just how we take in new information and then reconcile our understandings moving forward. But I think it would really help some of the problems I'm seeing in society right now.
For sure. And just like Dr. Harvey shared, I heard that, from you as well. I learned that different type of story structure. And it's so cool
Yeah.
to learn about something new, even as, educators and adults ourselves. We appreciate you so much for coming on today. Everything that you have to share is incredibly deep and it always resonates with me. I know it resonates with others. So thank you for coming on, opening up our party time with, something cool. And what you said, I feel like what you ended on, when we allow ourselves to go through these deep reflections, to work on ourselves and what,
Mhm.
our own juicy story, we give permission to our students, we empower our students, and we
Yeah.
just create these authentic opportunities for our students to do the same. And that's just the best way to have class, right?
Right? It always starts with us, right, Mel? It always does.
It
Always.
really does.
Mhm.
So thank you so much. If you want to stick around, you can be on our game time, but we
Yeah.
love you, Nat, and we'll see you
Oh,
again
thank you.
very soon.
Okay, see you in a bit.
All right. And the next guest I'm going to bring on is my teammate, Mr. Eric. How are you doing tonight, Eric?
I'm doing okay. I'm not much of a guest, especially compared to Natalie, who you just had. Uh, but
She's hard to follow.
we can only do our best. What can I say?
Well, you are going to tell us about these new updates. And Eric, so there are updates for those of us who have the free educator accounts. There are updates for those of us who are working with our schools that have adopted spaces, and so they have a professional account. It's exciting that all these new things that are coming up. I'm so excited for you to share. Do you want me to stay up here with you, or are you going to
Yeah,
share
you should
screen?
stay with me. I
Okay.
do need to share screen, so I know that there's a sort of a third screen that's going to pop in here any second.
Yes.
So I think
Boom.
first and foremost, we had our big announcement on Monday night. If you're not a subscriber or you're not a Spaces user and you're not on our newsletter, you missed out on a free prize. I guess to add
That's sad.
context, I think I hid somewhere in the email, if you did a certain thing, I would send you a prize. And I spent a lot of Tuesday morning, Wednesday morning, and even now I'm still getting people replying and claiming their prize. So I spent a lot of time sending out prizes to people this week. Anyways, I digress. I think what I
How do
want to
we get
say,
this prize?
well, are you on our email list?
How do we get on our email list?
Well, if you sign up for Spaces, you go to SpacesEDU.com, you create a free account. As part of the subscription, or your license, you are on our newsletter. So that's what I would recommend doing. But I think what I wanted to say is, big release, lots of new features. We're always releasing new things. If you go to SpacesEDU.com, you go to the very bottom and you click on what's called the product roadmap, you'll see that we've launched in August. We launched a bunch of new features. June, in spring, in winter, in fall, going back all the way to 2021, 2020. We're always releasing new features and we're always trying to iterate and make the SpacesEDU platform better one step at a time. These things don't happen overnight, but what I can say is one of the reasons we've seen early success is because we have that capacity to be a good partner, to listen to feedback, to make improvements on the things that could be better, and then to iterate and make them better and deliver on that. Anyways, I digress. So I want to talk about 4 things that we released this past week. One is the iPad app for students. So obviously, when you are using Chromebooks or iPads or whatever, you always want to get the best experience you can possible. And one thing that we heard from our partners was that students using SpacesEDU, although the web version on the browser and although the sort of mobile version that's been stretched and sort of repurposed for iPad worked well, there was a demand for the iPad app for students. And so that has been released. Right now, we are working hard on the iPad app for teachers and families, which will be out relatively soon and is on our roadmap, of course. And so the idea with this is always that it's a native app to the iPad. It makes using the iPad a little bit easier. It makes the students' lives easier. And the easier things are, the more engaged they're going to be, the more they're going to participate from what they have to do, the more they're going to sort of care about their portfolio. Because if it's hard to use and it's not useful or it's tough, it's easy to lose engagement. I think the other thing that's really cool that I want to talk about, and I'm going to go into my demo account, is the proficiency report. So this is just the demo version, and I have sort of like basic language here, but this is almost like the spreadsheet style view or the gradebook style view for SpacesEDU. And if you're new to SpacesEDU, you may not know, but the idea with Spaces is always that any artifact or any piece of learning, in this case, I might have a child talking about their volleyball or their basketball team. Any artifact or evidence of learning is always connected to either an academic standard or sometimes value-based outcomes or even behavioral outcomes. And then what happens is, as you connect artifacts of learning to certain outcomes, you then start to populate what's called the proficiency report based on whatever standards you have in your school, right? And so the idea with this is now we have a way at a higher level to look at what students are doing when it comes to certain outcomes. So, hey, I'm looking at Carla here. When it comes to leadership, she has 3 different evidences of learning, 3 different posts related to leadership. And they're all level 4. Again, she's doing a great job. She's been knocking it out of the park. She's a level 4 right now on our scale. And so this is an exciting new sort of update, different features, different little ways to use it. I won't get too deep into it, but something that I know a lot of partners are very excited to see. I think the other thing I want to talk about is what's called the reporting spaces. And so this is a V1 of something that's pretty new and pretty exciting. And so if you're a Spaces Pro user, you'll have access to this. But in this reporting space, it's almost supposed to be like a summative view of a child's learning or a student's learning in that particular year. And so right now, this is a V1, but I think what we want this to sort of start to become is like a visual report card, a live visual report card that's being updated all the time, every week, every other week, every month. And so that these learning updates for families are not just happening, either every 3 months or, at the end of the semester or at the end of the trimester, whatever it might be. And so with this, you can think of the reporting space as a place where you can curate certain pieces of evidence. So in this case, this is Carla's. And the way that it works is in our class, anything that Carla posts, I have the ability to bookmark. So I can add this, I can use this bookmark function here, and then this will add that particular artifact to Carla's reporting space. So in this case, if I hit this bookmark here, right, I go back to the reporting space, that video or her essay on school uniforms is now here, right? And so what this allows me to do is start to sort of curate Carla's best work or start to gather Carla's best work. Obviously, family can see what's going on here too. So if there are certain pieces of feedback or certain reasons for certain evidences to be there, it's great to share. And you also have what are called your summary statement, which is sort of, again, a live, ever-changing, could be summarization of that child's learning or that experience with that child in that classroom. And then areas of learning as well. And so areas of learning can be customized to specific sort of subjects. So it could be math, science, English. It could be things like attendance. It could be things like behavioral outcomes. So, how well of a team player is Carla? How well is she listening contently in class? Is she loud? Is she interruptive? What have you? Whatever the case might be.
What?
Yeah, and then I have the ability to
I feel attacked right now.
I'm not attacking anyone. I have that ability to always be sort of updating that live. So this is a V1. We're excited about where this is going to go and what this is going to become. But again, I think the vision, if I were to sort of leave viewers, is we want this to become a visual report card, a living, breathing visual report card that's always being updated. Maybe once a week, maybe every other week, maybe once a month, but still being something that's a summative look at that child's learning when appropriate.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome.
There's a bunch of other stuff. There's always more, but I don't want to, throw too much more. But yeah, again, if you're not using SpacesEDU, go to the website, get your free account, mess around. You'll be in touch. You'll be communicated to when other updates start coming down the pipeline again. I expect probably in January and then again in March. more updates, always getting better and very exciting.
Oh, very exciting. And I dropped a couple of links in here. If you want to know more about all of our updates, you can go to them. And if you're thinking, I need to see these in action, we have video tutorials as well. So we are here to support you. We've got a lot of great resources on our homepage, and that's how you get signed up as well. If you see the ticker, sign up for your free teacher account at SpacesEDU.com. Then you're going to get onto our newsletter, and you might get a prize from Eric. So he is, and we got some friends
Excited
joining
dog,
us.
yeah.
All right. So thank you so much for the updates. And again, like Eric said earlier, we love teacher feedback. If you go to our homepage, you scroll down and go to our product roadmap, you can see what we've already come out with. You can see what we're just about to come out with. And if you think, man, this should be on the list, we also have a place where you can share ideas. And we take it very seriously at Spaces EDU because we love educators. But
you can
that's
vote.
the boring stuff.
You can vote on what
it's
you
very
like.
exciting.
Yeah, you can submit new ideas. It's awesome. Go ahead.
No, it is very awesome. That's not boring at all. That's so exciting. But we have a game, and I hope that you're going to join us while you're watching. I'm going to bring Natalie back up. We played this a couple of months ago. Are you smarter than a fifth grader? And if you're watching, if you comment and play with us, you're going to be entered into a drawing to win. Eric, what can one of our community members win?
Yeah, we'll be giving away gift cards. And again, you got to play to, or at least comment to win. Costs nothing. You just got to be here.
What about people that are like, you're so early, you're on the East Coast and I'm on the West Coast? What do you what about people that want to watch the replay?
Yeah,
that
Toronto,
takes dedication.
Toronto's not the center of the universe, despite what many Torontonians might say. We'll be giving away gift cards to people who participate after the fact, and we'll have a form for that to capture your name and your email address so that you can
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, let's get to it here. Are you smarter than a fifth grader? Please play along if you're watching. And if you make us laugh, I might give you a prize just because you're awesome. I'm just joking. Okay. So we're going to start easy. Okay.
Oh, gosh.
Natalie, I'm going to pick on you first.
Let's do it. And you've just said easy. So we've really set me up here for embarrassment. Let's go.
Yes. Okay. First grade math. First grade math.
Alrighty, let's go.
Oh my gosh, there's two questions. I'm like, the first, I feel like you would know.
There better not be like trains traveling in opposite directions involved. Otherwise, I'm out.
I had that last time, actually.
Yeah, you did. That's like I have nightmares with that question. Oh, good times.
The first day of the 20th century was what?
Oh, okay. Yes, I've got this. The first day?
The first day of the 20th
like
century.
The date?
The date.
January 1st, 1901. 1900. 1900.
All right. Oh my gosh, I feel like that's Leslie, if that's Leslie here. Okay. Did you say January 1st, 1901?
1900.
Oh, I thought you said 1901, which
I did say 1901, but then I changed it to 1900 because I realized that was dumb.
No. 1901 was the correct answer.
What?
Yeah.
No, wait, because wait. I challenge this answer because when it was the turn of the millennium and it was 2000. It was that was the start of the 21st century.
And then when we started a new decade for the it's 2021. It's always on the first. You were right. Your gut told you the right answer.
Well, whoever my first grade teacher was, there you go. It transferred. I just don't trust myself. Oh, Lord.
That is a problem we all face. We all know this. Okay. I wondered, who is this Facebook user? We need to know your name. Got my fourth grader here joining in, and he claims he is smarter than a fifth grader. All right. Eric, I'm going to bring a fourth grade question for you. Since we got a fourth grader in the house.
The pressure's on. The pressure makes it hard. I'm not going to lie.
If a train leaves. No.
Oh my goodness.
It's weird. I'm breaking up. So I can't hear you.
Here's our fourth grade question. It's a math question as well. The interior angles of a triangle
180.
always the interior angles of a triangle always sum to
totally
right?
So easy. I totally would have
yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to ruin your vibe by knowing the answer halfway through.
Yeah, you are actually.
Math was not even the strong suit. I
am so surprised that you got that so quickly. I probably wouldn't have got that, to be honest with you. It's easier, to ask the questions than to answer.
Well, I would have
Totally.
looked silly if you said rectangle or something else, right?
Right.
Oh, Lord.
Okay. All right, Natalie, I'm going to go back to you. And please, if you're watching,
Okay.
join in the fun. This is third grade history. All right.
American?
No, this is, I try to pick one that's not just American.
Okay.
Okay.
Good.
Julius Caesar was the emperor of what empire?
Oh,
And you don't, yeah,
Caesar. Rome.
he was, in fact, the emperor of the Roman Empire. Very
Okay.
good. Look
Roman.
at us. You guys are so smart. But honestly, if you're watching, please play along. We need you. Like to laugh. Okay.
If this were like pop culture trivia, like random movie facts, I feel like I would crush it. I don't know why like school trivia just eludes me. It's probably sad.
It's not sad. It's you're on the spot. It's a lot harder when you're on the spot.
That's very true.
That is true. Yeah.
Right.
That.
Okay, Eric, your fourth grade history question is a country that does not take sides during the war is called what?
I don't know, a neutral state. I have no idea.
Indeed, that's what it's
Okay.
called, neutral.
Oh, okay. I thought there was like a formal word. Like obviously I know what neutral is, but I don't know.
It just
Anyways.
says neutral.
Okay, neutral. Awesome.
I think we're overthinking this, Eric. I think that's the
Yeah,
problem. We're
okay.
too smart for our own
I was going to
good.
say Switzerland.
Me too.
Like,
That's what I
yeah.
was thinking. Switzerland, obviously. Yeah.
All right. Well, okay, here we go. Oh, you were an English language arts teacher, weren't you, Natalie?
I was, yeah.
Okay, so we're going to go to first grade English language arts and see if we can stump you. And oh my goodness, I have a story question just for you.
Excellent. Let's go.
All right, first grade ELA for Natalie. And it's okay if you have to think about it. Maybe somebody's watching can give you, some help. But in the story about the boy who cried wolf, are you familiar with that story?
I am, yes.
Okay. In the story about the boy who cried wolf, what is the lesson?
If you're going to say something, it better be true, essentially. Because isn't the whole story like he keeps saying these things are happening, but they're not actually happening, and then no one believes him when he actually does speak up?
Yes.
So you can't lie.
You're right. It's always speak the truth. That is the lesson. But I want to take it a little further. What type of story structure, Natalie, would it be?
Oh, Lord. Probably. I'm going to just
Rags
say
to
the easy
riches.
answer. It's a 3-part story structure, beginning, middle, end.
Okay.
No. I actually don't know. That's an interesting one. Do you know if there's like 7? This is so nerdy. I'm not even going to go on this tangent.
Yes, go on it.
I have this giant book. It's kicking around here somewhere. But some guy who, I can't remember his name, Chris Booker, which is ironic with story. But he studied stories his entire career. That's all he studied. And he eventually surmised that there's only ever 7 story structures. So it's like Rags to Riches, The Quest, Defeating a Monster, Voyage and Return. Anyways, it's kind of fascinating going down that. Because then you start to see it everywhere. Like every time someone talks, every time you watch something, you're like, oh, it's a quest. I see what they did there. It's like X-ray vision.
The one I always remember is The Hero's Journey, right? Is that one?
Yeah. And then Joseph Campbell. So he did the same. A lot of people like to do this, to like look at the world through the lens of story and try to sum it all up. Here's something fun about The Hero's Journey, though. So Campbell did that structure. He died in the mid-'80s, and then his student, who was a female, said that's cool and all, but you only ever studied stories written by men. That isn't the story structure of women. So she was a psychologist at the time, and she wrote the first iteration of the heroine's journey. And the argument is that instead of going out into the world, they go inside and they have to claim the goddess within and then learn how to bring that forward into the masculine world. So there's many women now who write within that structure.
Awesome.
Thought you'd like that, Mal.
I do like that very much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I just dropped a link. So if you're watching the replay or you're watching right now and you're like, I do not want to get one of these questions wrong, but you definitely want to enter a prize, go ahead and enter a prize to win. Fill out this type form, whether you're watching live or the replay, and you will be entered into a prize to win. I'm going to have 2 more questions and then we're going to wrap it up. All right, Eric, I am going to give you a 3rd grade ELA question. Are you ready?
I'll do my best.
These are fun questions. I'm going to go with a story question for you too. What do you call the part of the story with all the action or the big twist?
Climax.
Very good. Dang! You are so smart.
Not really.
Okay.
You're just kind, I think.
I
You're
know.
giving me the easy
You know,
questions.
that's cool. We're getting participation ribbons. It's fine, Eric.
Okay, so we're gonna end this game. I'm gonna give you guys, I want to do 2 fifth grade questions, but I'm gonna move on to science. That's how we're gonna end 2 fifth grade questions in
Science.
science.
Oh. Okay.
Man, these are easy. Maybe I don't want to ask these.
Are
What were
they?
the other questions you were going to ask?
Well, I was like more ELA, but I could
I
also
see.
ask geography. Do you guys like geography or
Ooh.
science?
I struggle with remembering trivia and stuff, so it's all going to be tricky. So science or geography really doesn't matter.
Okay, I'll give you an easy one, Natalie. Is it your turn right now?
Yes.
It is. Yes.
Okay, this determines who wins the game. Is it going to be
Okay.
Natalie or is it going to be Eric? We'll
Okay.
see. Fifth grade science, and of course, all my fellow fifth grade teachers out there, I know that you're going to get this in 3 seconds flat. Let's see if Natalie can do that too. What are the 3 states of matter?
Oh, really? Okay. Solid, liquid, and gas.
Yay!
Yay!
Do you know the 4th state of matter by chance?
Melody's attitude.
Whatever, there really is one, but I can't even think of it. I was hoping you guys knew there is one.
No,
Really?
I don't know what it
Yeah.
is.
Oh.
It's like a liquidy, it has a name anyway, and it's kind of like putty. But yeah, is anybody talking? All right, Eric. So you guys are tying. Maybe I should go until you guys break the tie, but now, okay. All right, here's your 5th grade science question, Eric. Which tool is used to estimate the likelihood of certain genetic outcomes?
What? That's 5th grade? Oh, Lord. Good luck, Eric.
Which tool? Could you repeat the question?
Yeah. Which tool is used to estimate the likelihood of certain genetic outcomes? You have a lifeline. You've not used any of your lifelines.
I don't know any science teachers.
Oh.
You want me to give you a hint?
Yeah.
So it's a geometrical shape. It's part of a geometrical shape.
Okay.
And you put the heterozygous and the homozygous genes, or the recessive and dominant. It has
is it
to do
a
with
helix?
recessive. Close.
A helix test? I got it
No,
wrong.
that's DNA. But being dominant and recessive traits.
Gene. Yeah. Okay. I guessed. I got it wrong.
Okay, you lose, but it is called the Punnett square.
That is not a grade 5 one. I feel like, where did you pull that from?
That was grade 5 advanced placement, I guess.
Yeah, no kidding. It's a real smart.
Well, I was bound to get one of these wrong eventually. That's fine.
Well, it was
just letting
fun
me
to play
win.
with
That's
you
all.
guys.
You knew.
Yeah, you guys are so fun. Can you see? Nobody really. Michael, he was the only person that really talked. I hope that you guys will go to this link that I dropped to get a prize. Okay. Fill out this, whether you're watching live or the replay, and hopefully one of you will win a prize. But thank you guys so much for being here today. We have just had so much fun with opening remarks from Natalie. We hope that you'll follow her. And Eric, thank you for giving us the best updates that we have so far. It's been amazing. And thank you to everyone who's been watching. We appreciate you so much. Thank you for being part of our community. And if you aren't a part of our community and you're watching this from somewhere outer space on and the socials, we are on facebook.com/groups. Ooh, I have a banner for this.
Use the banner.
Yeah, I'm going to put the banner. We hope that you'll join us this weekend. We actually have our PLN coffee talk where we get on a Zoom and you come as you are, whether you can have bed hair, it's okay. You can have your robe on. Try to have clothes on, please. And I even put out a Starbucks coffee card to get everybody a coffee. I'll put that out tomorrow for our community members. But thank you so much for joining us tonight. We appreciate everybody in our community, and we'll see you again soon. Goodbye, everybody.
Thanks, Melody. Thanks, Natalie.
Thanks, Mel.